How's it going, everybody? Welcome in the NOLA Preps Friday Night Live. Technically Saturday now. It was quite a long week. Spencer Urquhart here, bringing y'all a week 2 show here. Yeah, it was quite the week with the Superdome doubleheader. It was quite eventful. Rummel U High kicked it off, and then Carr American Heritage was the second game. American Heritage out of Florida, of course, the out-of-state opponent coming to face Edna Carr. And the Cougars were able to get the victory there in overtime. So let's bring in my colleagues here, Chris, Dabe, and Joe Halm. Chris is live from the Dome, just got done covering that Carr game. So I guess we'll start with you, man. Tell us about that overtime showdown.
Yeah, it was really something. Carr got the game to overtime with a field goal at the end of regulation by Brian Castellon. And I don't know that there's been many times where Carr has needed to make a field goal to tie or win the game at the end of regulation. But I'm trying to look at my notes here. He made a 37-yard field goal. Carr made a little bit of a comeback there to get it to overtime. And then John Johnson ran for the winning touchdown in overtime. Carr had the first possession, then they got the stop. They got the stop they needed to win the game. And kind of the notable thing is that the quarterback for American Heritage, he didn't play tonight. Dia Bell, he's the one the ranked tops in the country. He apparently had some kind of injury. I asked the coach real briefly afterwards what happened. He made reference to a minor procedure. So he didn't play. So that took a little bit of the luster off the game. But still, despite all that, I mean, Heritage has a team that if you look at the 24/7 recruiting rankings of the top 250 players in the state of Florida, they got 9 other guys other than Dia Bell that are on that list, and they have countless other players that are going to be playing in college somewhere. So this is an absolutely loaded showdown. So even though maybe it didn't have one of the headliners, it still was a lot of talent out there on the field.
100%. Yeah, it looked like a thriller there. Yeah, talk to us about the end there that stand Carr had there. They had the 4th down, one more chance, and Carr's defense got it done there. Just how big was that moment?
Yeah, I mean, it was a pretty big moment. You could tell that the Carr kids in the crowd, the Carr had a real good crowd here. A lot of Algiers came and showed out, and you could tell they really wanted it. I mean, I know it wasn't for a state championship, but it was here in the Dome, and it was against a very good team. And yeah, they didn't gain any positive yardage except on that last play, just desperately trying to get to the end zone, and Carr stuffed them about 5 yards away from the end zone, pushed them out of bounds, and then they started celebrating like you might expect.
For sure. Any individuals that really stood out to you from Carr?
It's really hard to say. I'm still kind of swimming through the details of what happened. I think one of the takeaways I might have had is that this Carr offense, it's different than last year. I might have talked about that a little bit last week, that the passing game is going to have to come along. They don't have those 3 wideouts who college commits last year, so they're working on a lot of experience, and certainly what they experienced tonight is going to pay off in the future. When I'm sure they're going to have a game that's going to be closer than we might expect down the road, or they're going to be playing one of the tough District 9-5A teams, or getting in the playoffs, and that's where they're going to look back at this experience and say, well, we've been through it and we won.
For sure. And talk to us about the Rummel U High game, the game that kicked this doubleheader off. I think Rummel got the dub there, 30-17, big win for Rummel, their first win of the year.
Yeah, that game feels like it was days ago now. I've been at the Dome for the last 7 hours, but yeah, that Rommel just kind of took over in the second half physically. They manhandled them up on the offensive line. Running backs Jaden Terrence and Corian Hawkins, they both topped 100 yards. Jaden Terrence returned a kickoff right at the end of the first half for a touchdown after U-High went ahead 7-3. Then Terrence actually, he let the ball hit off his shoulder pads, bounced on the turf. He picked it up and made up for that miscue and darted down the field, got the lead, and then the second half, Rommel just took over physically, and that's really kind of the thing that stood out. Both coaches talked during the week about kind of the physical play of the line, and that really decided things. You'll hear coaches talk about that all the time, but it really showed here with how Rommel handled things especially in the second half.
For sure. Yeah, Rommel had a great run and attack last year. Looked to be more of the same there for Coach Nick Monica's squad. So let's shift gears a little bit to St. Tammany Parish, Joe. We got Joe Halm here with us. Tell us about that Covington-Franklinton game you were at, man. It looked like a barn burner there. 28-26, Covington gets the win.
Yeah, Covington led wire to wire in this game. You wouldn't know it by the final score, but it's 21-6 late in the game. It's about 9 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. All of a sudden, you're thinking things are done, and Jacob Crane throws a couple of touchdown passes. Matt Fusel for Covington runs for a couple of touchdowns, and it's a one-score game. Franklinton recovered an onside kick with about 2:20 left, 2:40 left. They marched down the field, had some good runs. Crane scores with 10 seconds left. There's a lot of chatter in the press box about how they handled timeouts. Thought I was at a Saints game or on a Saints blog. He's talking about how he used timeouts, but they get the touchdown, they go for two, and a junior comes up big. Derek Dunbar had a sack. Crane rolls out. Dunbar says, "I'm going to fight through these two guys." Big sack. Covington recovers the onside kick and hold on. And I mean, it was a really good game for both teams in terms of just a week 2 test. Um, Franklinton last year they lost that game and they didn't lose again until they were on the turf where Chris is at. So Coach Stoll talked about that after the game, that it would be a good learning experience. And for Covington, Coach Salter was very adamant. He said, we played good for 3 quarters, and then in the fourth quarter, everything just sort of fell apart, and we still found a way, which was the most important thing in all of this. So it was a really exciting game that was a little bit herky jerky in the third quarter, and then the fourth quarter just lived up to the billing that this matchup had.
For sure. Any individuals stand out from that contest?
Yeah, Covington came in with a quarterback controversy. They don't have one anymore. Matthew Fusel, the junior, is their QB. He ran for 165 yards and 2 TDs. He threw for 2 TDs and over 100 yards. He was efficient at times, and he looked like a junior at times, but he got the job done, and he had 2 big runs in the fourth quarter. And then the Covington defense did really great. DeMarcus Scott stood out on that. He made a lot of big plays throughout the game, had some big tackles. He was playing his first game. He missed week 1 with a little bit of an injury. But Dunbar will get all the headlines, and rightfully so. He made that tackle. But it was a really good effort by the Covington defense against Franklinton team that I'm telling you right now, that team's going to compete in Division II for a state championship. They are that good. And, they showed it tonight. And it was a really fun game at Jack Salter Stadium.
For sure. Yeah, got quarterback Jacob Crane back there at Franklinton. So, yeah, looking good for the Demons. Other North Shore scores, Lakeshore, I saw, got the win over Chalmette. And the thing that really kind of surprised me from Thursday night was that Northlake Christian score beating Episcopal. So, any other North Shore takeaways from this week, Joe?
Yeah, I mean, I think Northlake had a really good bounce back. I think Casanave, their running back, had 4 TDs in that game and over 200 yards. Episcopal's a good program. It's hard to win on the road at Episcopal, and they were able to do it. So that was really good bounce back. They'll go into a bye week. But I talked to Coach Willis after this morning, and he said, I think we found our identity, and I asked him what that was, and he goes, we like to fight. We like being in a fight. So that's a good sign for a team that has some seniors in it and is pretty stout. I think that was probably the biggest takeaway from the North Shore. Otherwise, Lakeshore took care of business. I thought that was impressive. And I think everything else went pretty much according to plan. Some big wins for Pope, John Paul at Varnado. And St. Paul's played a good Brother Martin team. Obviously, Brother Martin won that game. Easton Royal had a really big game. That's not surprising, but I think St. Paul's get better from that. And I thought it was a fun week. Those were the 3 games that I thought would be good, and they were all competitive, good games. And I think right now, it's all about trying to find out what your team's going to be. Chris mentioned with Carr, they've got to figure out what the offense is going to be like. Right now, Covington's figuring out how to win a tight game. Lakeshore is figuring out how to win on the road. So these are all things that you like to see in week 2, because in week 6, all these teams will be a lot better.
Yes, indeed. Watching the NOLA Prep Friday night post-game show here, a late night edition after that Superdome doubleheader here with myself, Chris Dabe, and Joe Halm. So, Chris, I know you were at the Holy Cross De La Salle game Thursday night. That one ended up a low-scoring defensive struggle there. Holy Cross winning 20-0. Any takeaways from that game Thursday night?
Yeah, it was a 20-0 ball game, and yeah, I was kind of impressed by the Holy Cross quarterback Jacob Farina. Just he played a real efficient game. I don't have his numbers right in front of me, but passing wise, very efficient. And then when he had no receivers open, he knew when to run the ball. He picked up some big chunks of yards there. So he did a good job of just kind of taking what the defense gave him in that sense. Um, and then there was the pick six by Savoy Guidry late in the first half. De La Salle was driving with a chance to take a lead at 7-6. It was 6-0 at the time, and De La Salle tried a little screen pass, and Savoy Guidry stepped in the way, got the ball, and ran about 84 yards for the touchdown. And I asked the De La Salle coach afterwards, was that a screen? What was going on there? And he said, yeah, they didn't block it right. So, so that put Savoy in good spot to make the play. He said it was first pick six he's ever had for high school football, first year starter. And so that was kind of cool talking to him after the game about that. But yeah, those are the kind of the main takeaways: quarterback play, and then that big play by Savoy there to get the pick six.
For sure. Yeah, good week for District 9-5A. Brother Martin, we had touched on that game. Easton Royal and company are able to take down St. Paul's there 37-27. And then Jesuit holds off E.D. White there 24-21. It looked like E.D. White was winning for a good bit of that game when I was looking at the scoreboard. And it looked like Jesuit, though, obviously got the W there. So
yeah, and that would be the second week in a row that E.D. White, was up on one of the 9-5A schools. Holy Cross did the same thing last week and went down the field and scored against E.D. White to get the win. And I saw John Curtis 53-11 over North Shore, and after what John Curtis did, I think that's 2 games in a row now with 50 some points. So it'll be interesting to see how they are. I think they're off next week, and then they get into Catholic League play. So they might have an offensive system going like they always have, being real productive. I thought the St. Charles score 28-0 against Lutcher was pretty notable. Those teams have always played such close games in recent years, real low scoring games. So to see St. Charles kind of take care of things there was pretty notable after what they did last week against Newman. And last year they started out 0-4, and here they are now 2-0, and with a one-sided win against kind of a traditional nemesis of theirs, and right there in the River Parishes. And I think St. Charles hasn't given them a touchdown in 2 games. And then Willow got their win against Country Day, which I'm sure that's the folks over at Willow are pretty happy about that. It seems like they have some good offensive players on their roster there, to 33-20 over there.
Definitely, yeah, good win for Willow there, 2-0 start. And yeah, I was uptown tonight for Newman Riverside. That was a pretty good game there, 19-13. Riverside got the win. My takeaways from that was a lot of good defensive plays. The player that stood out to me was 2 players from Riverside. I'd say Kendrick Boogie Johnson. I mean, he's the one everyone knows about, the sophomore athlete that plays all over the field, contributed as a receiver, running back, wildcat quarterback, defensive back, came up with a big interception and caught a receiving touchdown. That was pretty big. But the other name that stood out from Riverside is Jace Trosclair, who's normally an every down linebacker, which he did that in this game, but also was their primary running back. And they lost their workhorse from the past few years, Dedrick Lasty, graduated now at Nichols, but Trosclair was a force in the backfield and racked up, I believe finished, 79 rushing yards and a touchdown on 17 carries. So it was, I think that was probably the biggest plus for Riverside, was being able to get a back there to carry the load in Trosclair, who's also a good defensive player for him.
Yeah, I think he's been a stalwart there in defense. And I remember from talking to Lee Roussel before the season, he missed part of the year last year with an injury. So he was pretty eager to get back and get playing again. Sounds like he's got kind of an expanded role there for Riverside. And that's a team that was right here in the Dome a couple of years ago. So I'm sure they're hoping to get back here again.
Yes, indeed. Any other week 2 takeaways before we take a peek at week 3?
None here. I think we've kind of covered a lot. How about you, Joe?
I think I'm happy for Chris that Wayne Steib is so excited about his defensive. I didn't even make that connection that they hadn't given up a touchdown yet. St. Charles Catholic. That's a coach who's really excited, defensive minded coach, and after going 0-4 a couple of years ago, that's a big thing, man. That's I didn't make that connection until you said it, but that's pretty big for them.
He's a defensive minded coach, but he's taken over the offensive play calling this year. So that's a new role for him, but I'm sure he knows what he's doing.
Yeah. Yeah, also their baseball coach. So yeah.
And athletic director.
Wow. Mr. St. Charles, Wayne Stein. Yep. So all right, y'all. So week 3, got some good matchups in store. Probably the one that stands out to me as the biggest one would be the megaphone game of Rummel at Shaw. I know you covered that one last year, Chris. What are your early thoughts on that upcoming matchup?
If I remember right from last year, what Romo did in that game is similar to what they did tonight against U High, which was kind of take over in the second half with the line play. And Romo this year has 9 defensive starters back from last year, so that might be that'll be kind of the thing to watch for is just how that defense holds up against Rommel, kind of looking ahead to that game. And they looked really good against Carr last week in those first few series. They kept Carr at a punt twice, and they forced a fumble once in those first 3 series. And I think even Hank Tierney said afterwards they were on the field too much. Their offense wasn't getting anything going. So if their offense can get something going a little bit against Rommel, and that's an offense that returned only 2 starters. So that's another kind of like what I talked about with Carr. Shaw's another one of those teams where they're going to be finding their identity on offense as the season goes along, and maybe kind of leaning on that defense. So those would be my early thoughts there on that Rommel Shaw matchup.
Heard that. Any North Shore thoughts, Joe, here heading into week 3?
Yeah, I mean, I think De La Salle St. Paul's will be a good game. I think both teams will be looking. It's always a tough game. It's always hard fought. I think that's a good one. I'm really excited for Slidell Easton. I think that's an interesting game for Slidell. Slidell's 2-0 for the first time since 2011. They've got to go on the road. They got to go play at Pan Am. It's a different environment. I think that'll be a nice test for them. And if they can come out 3-0, the sky's the limit for that team. I think those are probably the 2 big ones. Lakeshore gets to host North Shore next week, and North Shore obviously struggled against Curtis, but I think everyone's going to struggle against Curtis. So I think that's another nice test for Lakeshore as they step up in classification against a 5A school, and I would think those would be your 3 big ones. And Covington gets to host Booker T. Washington. So Covington looking to go 3-0, which would be a big start for them.
For sure. A few other ones I've found. Chalmette Holy Cross, an old rivalry. That should be a good game. Usually always is. Alexandria coming to Destrehan. Should be an interesting one there. Edie White at Hanville should be good. South Plaque at Bell Chase. A couple of Plaquemine Parish rivals there going at it. St. Charles going to be tested at Dunham, going against the 5-star Elijah Haven at quarterback, and see what Wayne Stein's team can do against that elite talent. And then Kennedy at Santa Mott should be interesting. Class 3A Kennedy against 5A Santa Mott. But yeah, that's about all I got as far as interesting week 3 matchup. Any I forgot about, Chris?
No, those are the ones I was going to mention myself as well. Certainly that Destrehan Alexandria one has potential to be pretty. I mean, Destrehan's always a semifinal, state final team, and of course Alexandria was right here in the Dome last year. Unfortunately for them, it was against Carr, but that's a pretty good matchup right there. And then Holy Cross and Chalmette, like you mentioned, and South Plaque and Bell Chase are just good rivalry games. And those games, I think those games this year really have the makings to be some pretty good contests. And talking to Scott Wadnick last night after the Holy Cross game, he said he's lost to Chalmette 3 times in his life, once as a player, once as the Hannon coach, and once as the Chalmette coach. And the time as the Chalmette coach was last year. And so certainly he's looking, and his players are looking to avenge that one. But Chalmette was a quarterfinal team last year, so they're not going to back down to anybody.
For sure. All right. Well, it should be a fun week 3. Definitely was a fun week 2. Chris, I know, had a lot of fun at the Superdome. Joe had fun at Franklinton, Covington. I had a good time at Riverside Newman. So that'll do it for this one. We'll be back next Friday, hopefully a little earlier next Friday, and actually on a Friday, technically Saturday. But appreciate everyone watching and everyone that's watching the replay. For Joe Halm and Chris Dabe, Spencer Urquhart signing off.